Hey, look, Chloe, I remembered to share my screen this time. You don't have to yell at me today. You can yell at me if you want. Just go for it. Scream bloody murder. Okay, Victor. Oh yeah, won't let me zoom out. Okay. All right, so this is legitimate. I can see what you're thinking here. I would have preferred it though, if you would have, this thing gets stuck down there. I don't want it down there anymore. I want it up here. I think that you would have been better to start with a bat that was in the 3/4 so that you could see his little shape. You know, as it is right now, your head and your body are foreshortening each other, and your line of action is technically like straight up and down. And so even in your first exaggeration, your line of action is straight up and down. You know, I certainly understand that you're going to round off the wings here, you know, with this little rounded section here. But I think that you lose the bat quality of not exaggerating it like this, right? Just because bats are silent flyers, and I think that it would have been more to your advantage to try to keep some of that sharpness rather than rounding it off. This is a good idea here. I like what you were doing with the actual face, but you missed the ears and the eyes.
I mean, it's a bat.
It is, but I think that just exactly what I said. The idea of finding good reference that has a good line of action is going to take you further in your study of what we're doing in exaggeration. All right, so remember that what we had said last week was that, you know, you're finding the line of action, you're finding the way the dog was built geometrically, and then you're exaggerating that line of action. And so what I see here is that you've killed the arc. You know, if you would have seen that the arc might have gone through the bean form this way, curving that way, then you killed it in this exaggeration number 1. You brought it back a little bit here, but like I said last week, I much prefer the idea of you keeping the construction in there as you're studying it. All right, and this guy's like one of those little dragon guys. So I think that you're on the right track here. Definitely better in the 3/4. Remember though that I am looking to see more construction, not just the line down the middle of his arm, but the line that connects his arm. How does it flow together? You got this, you got the head and the body and the tail, and you've exaggerated it there. I think that this one's more successful. All right, thank you, Victor. Lauren Campbell. Okay, great. This is exactly what you should be doing. You got your bear. Regardless, I mean, this was the thing that I was like putting in my notes for today, that if you can pull this off and say, where's your line of action in this pose? Well, it's there. I can see that Lauren has built the line of action in her first exaggeration here. You know, she's probably getting it more from reference in this pose, but then exaggerating the size of the face and the pose and the dynamics. This is exactly what you should all be looking at. And this is one of those things where if we were in the classroom, it might be hard to show this to everybody. Hey, hold that up, Lauren. Here you can see it right in your computer. You could even screen capture if you wanted to keep it. So this is exactly what you're looking for. This is great. Your little your warthog. Yeah, this is great. So remember that the warthog has multiple tusks, and you could have even exaggerated them a little bit more. Line style is great. Forced perspective. She's drawing her cone. Exactly what you should be doing. Okay.
I had a little hard time with the crocodile.
Yeah, I think that what you do, or what you are up against, is all of the stuff from Disney, right? And so I think that as soon as you start pushing it towards the Princess and the Frog, you're like, oh yeah, I see what you're doing. For whatever it's worth, I think you've got the right idea, and you presented that you've got the right idea in the first two. I think that a crocodile is just really hard. It's just really hard. All right, thank you, Lauren. Oh, they're intermediate hands for everybody so far. Sorry, I keep forgetting. All right, I don't know what I did here. Hold on. Oh, I see what I did. Okay. Hanukkah. Okay, this is exactly what you should be doing as well. There's an extra study in here. So you've got the reference, you're exaggerating it again and again too. So yeah, this is a correct way to study it. I think that a bird with its wings in flight is very dramatic. And I think that you've got the facial study, you've got the feet part, you've got these little ears that you're studying. It's just hard to see because of the sketchy quality of your drawing, but it's exactly what you need to be doing. Thank you, Emery. And your crane, this is nice too. It's weird. I'm sorry, you're not allowed to say weird unless you say weird a weird way. It's just weird because when you see the crane as a reference, Mother Nature has already exaggerated the hell out of this bird. What are you supposed to do? Make the legs like really, 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 really long? It's not going to look like a crane anymore. So I think you did the best you could here, skinnying up the neck, fattening up the neck, playing with it. Definitely what I'm looking for. And you've gone from a mouse to a Fledermaus. Anybody know any German or Swiss? A mouse.
Isn't that like what their tooth fairy is?
I don't
They have like
know.
their version of the tooth fairy is a little mouse that comes and like takes the teeth.
No, yeah, I think you're right, but a Fledermaus is a bat, squeaky bat, the winged bat. The German interpretation is winged bat. Yeah, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Thank you, Annika. Fernando. Okay, great. Excellent. Yes, exactly what I'm looking for. And you can see all your classmates are nodding too. Just nod, Chloe, nod. You and Lauren are the only ones I can see moving. It's exactly what you're trying to accomplish in studying the form. Okay, so maybe I don't see the geometry built in behind it. Maybe I don't see the line of action, but these are good drawings. And so it's that point where you say, why is that? And this is not for what we're looking at here. If a drawing that we're looking at needs work, if it needs adjustment, where does it need work in the process? Did you start with a solid curved line of action? Is the line of action a single curve or is it a compound curve? I don't think we need to do that here just because the drawings are good. Thank you, Fernando. And I don't need to draw over this. This is great. All right, Mr. Noah. Oh no. Okay, I'll buy this. Lines are looking a little wobbly in the second iteration here. I think that you've got the build in there on your first one, but you don't have it in the ones here unless it was there and you took it out. I would prefer that you control the volume of the front legs, because his left front leg is a certain thickness, but then his right one is skinnier, and his left front paw is asymmetrical to his right front paw. And unless that's the point of your design, that you're doing like asymmetrical dog, then I think you would have a better aesthetic, a better result by just staying true to that process of exaggerating the line of action, exaggerating the form, exaggerating the volume, and then adding the details. I think in this one, you might have tried to add the details a little too soon. All right, so you picked a worm. It's like one of the hardest characters to exaggerate. Yeah, making it long, that's a good idea. Giving it anthropomorphization, that's fine. You got the line of action in this one, sort of. And it's got that form. Okay, I think once again, it's okay. It would have been better with the line of action. All right, so the shark is the most beautiful Mother Nature's creatures. There was like a picture I was just watching the other day about a megalodon. It's like the biggest shark that there has ever been. This thing was like, what was it, 12 meters? It was almost like 35 feet long. It's just a huge shark. It was even bigger than that. And you could tell that the shape of it was just designed perfectly to go fast through the water. And so your main reference here is good, but I'm going to take issue with this little inside curve here. You know, all of a sudden it looks like he's got a bite taken out of his back. The third iteration has a bite that's taken out of his back too. I think this could have been just a little more successful if you would have used a stronger process. Making notes as we go. Okay, thank you, Noah. Uh-oh, Chloe's next. Okay, Anteater. Good, you're being really subtle. Be more brave. You can be subtle. This is great, right? Which one? It goes 1, 2, and 3?
It was 1, 2, 3. I think I don't know where the third number was. The first, it's the leftmost one, and then the top one, and then the bottom one.
Okay. Yeah, I think you could be more brave. You're on the right track. Don't be so safe. I would not drive a car without my seatbelt. I would not ride a motorcycle without a helmet. But you can be as crazy here as you want to be, and you should. So don't be afraid. Just be crazy. This is more exaggeration. Yes. I'm only worried about one little thing, and that is the reference drawing. Two things. One, it's that you didn't find an image that was more true in the 3/4, so that he's just foreshortened just a little bit too much. But then in the third exaggeration, it doesn't have the balance. And I think that it doesn't have the balance because I think you were worried. You were struggling with the idea of just how much to push the exaggeration. And instead it looks like she is falling backwards just a little bit. So if I would just make any kind of adjustment or any kind of suggested adjustment, it might be that you start with the head you get that line of action in there, right? You get the body part. And then remember too, that if you found that this was just a potato instead of the bean thing we were talking about last week, right? Then you might have had better luck in your first exaggeration by just exploring a bigger bean shape, and then maybe like I don't know, something here. But then the line of action keeps him balanced on his feet. And then, so that's what's missing here, is that if you had exaggerated this a little bit back out here or something, and then made it more so that it was balanced, it would have, I think it would have worked just a little better. Let me see if I can route out the example of the one that's just like riding in my mind right now, and that's that was an armadillo, right? There was an armadillo in Rango. Did you see Rango? Yeah, it's wonderful. I have a whole bunch of friends who worked at ILM, and they worked on all kinds of stuff. Pirates of the Caribbean, Star Wars. These people have like an internet movie database that's like 40 movies long. And whenever they would do discussions, whenever they would do guest speaking, they would always say that Rango is their favorite thing that they worked on. It was directed by Gore Verbinski. Gore Verbinski is the director who did a couple of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. And so it's got that weird kind of pirate kind of feel to it. It's also a take on Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And then there's also this other weird story that goes behind it. The armadillo is one of like the craziest, coolest characters that's in the film. It's not the best picture there, but there you go. So let me go back here. All right, thank you, Chloe. Hands for everybody so far. Hands. Ryan. Oh, you're going down here. Okay. All right. So this in its simplest form is what we were looking for. The head, the body, the shape. I think that you were just being a little safe. I think you could have pushed it a little more. Remember, you're not going to get in trouble. The more exaggeration here, the better. It's almost like you're saying, wow, this was really fun. I'm going to do a fourth and a fifth one. So yes, this is what I'm looking for. Ryan, did you have your sketchbook today?
No, I don't have it yet.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Ria? I like how I hold up this red notebook and you people can't see it. You could just see my hand sitting there, right? It's like, oh, my head disappears. Oh, it's supposed to be green screen, but it's a red screen. All right, I'm sorry, Ria. Oh yeah, this is great, yeah. Oh yeah, and you picked a really hard one to do on the third one, and you probably felt that, right? Are you there? Ria, Miss Ria?
Yeah, I'm here.
So did you feel like you were struggling with this walking stick?
A little bit. It seems easy to break down, but then it's a little bit more difficult.
I think that you want to just kind of think about what Mother Nature was thinking about when she was building the walking stick. I think that if you think about it in terms of Darwin and really kind of analyze what is a walking stick, it looks like a stick. But why would an animal have an advantage in looking like a stick? Because then other animals wouldn't eat it. They wouldn't try to eat it. They wouldn't even look at it. Why would I want to eat a stick? Right? So then your job as this would be really hard if you were given this to design a walking stick for a game or a walking stick for any kind of animation, it might be really difficult to not go in and really put in like bare feet and explore what a face might look like, and taking the walking stick to more of a genre kind of thing where he's wearing a tuxedo and a monocle, or he's playing the guitar. You know what I mean? Oh, you got the saxophone, right? So yeah, you should have had him playing the violin.
Yeah, I would have been.
Instead, you gave him Thor's hammer. Is that Thor's hammer?
It's a little hammer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
The odd thing is I've been diving into Norse mythology, and I didn't say this to this class over the last couple of weeks. Did I say this? I don't know. I think that what I was doing is I had a conversation with my friend, and he's got his master's degree in mythology. He's just like out of control. If you get him to, it's hard to not get him to talk about Campbellian mythology and mythology just in general. And I kind of like listening to what he was saying and applying it to what I was doing, because I'm doing a freelance thing for him. And I thought to myself, we were talking about like action hero movies, American action hero movies. And I was like, oh God, they're all the same. The X-Men, the Avengers, all of them, they're all the same. You know the ending before the movie even starts. It's just a bunch of details. It's about action. It's about adventure. It's about fast moving characters on the screen, back and forth, back and forth. And for some reason, I had thought about the Ragnarok movie because they were trying to be funny in it. Has anyone seen the Ragnarok? And so there's funny elements in there, right? Where he tries to throw something at the window to break it, and it bounces off and hits him and knocks him. There are funny elements. I think the more you try to do that, the more interesting the film becomes. The director did that in the first Mummy. If you remember seeing the first Mummy, it's like, yeah, okay. So what about the action movie? It's okay if you try to be funny. Well, I was on Netflix looking for Ragnarok, and I ended up finding this thing. I think it was Netflix. I highly recommend the Queen's Gambit, by the way. It's the mini series is called Ragnarok. And it was filmed in like Sweden or something. This one, if anyone has Netflix, this is really, really interesting. I'm just gonna go out here. It's these cast of characters. There's nobody famous whatsoever. But there's 6 episodes, and it's very interesting, because it does not pertain to American mythology at all. It is like steeped in Norse mythology. And it's like a couple of the characters are like, wait, you're a giant or are you a god? And then I'm like, okay, I had to stop playing the movie and go, what's the difference between a giant and a god? In other words, is the giant the bad guy, or is God the bad guy? I didn't know, so I did a bunch of research. I highly recommend that one. All right, thank you, Ria. Mitzi. Oh, you picked cats and wolves, cats and dogs, and a worm. You picked the 3 hardest ones to do, Mitzi. Oh no, you wrote, I hate these.
I only like the middle tiger I did, the chubby tiger. That's the only thing I like. And the pill.
Well, just analytically, you picked your fox in the front view, so that the head and all of the body parts are foreshortening each other. And so the tiger is more successful because you got him in a near 3/4 view. And the worm, it's like you've just discovered that the only thing you could do with the worm is make a pill out of it. All right, I'm going to eat the worm. Yeah, but I think that if you would have found a fox that was in more 3/4, it would have been a little easier. Cross-reference like Wes Anderson's design for the fox and all that. I think that you definitely morphed him into a character that would be appealing to kindergartners, right? And I don't think that I would do this so heavily in this class, but you could think about
I
this.
didn't know what else to do for the tiger
Well, you could
because I
think
had
about
already
saying,
really
I'm
fallen
gonna,
in
I'm
love
gonna
with
give you
one.
fox reference, and I want you to do a generation of exaggeration for a very young audience, and then I want you to make a monster out of it. You know what I mean? So take the tiger and then make it for a very young audience, and then take the tiger and make it into a monster. So you could do this with the worm. You could do this with the worm right now as we're talking. You could say, what would the worm look like if he was a monster? Have you ever seen the movie Dune? Have you ever read the
No.
book Dune by Frank Herbert?
No, but I remember the monster worm.
You remember him
from SpongeBob.
because he was a crazy monster, right? I mean,
Yes.
I'm just going to type in Dune and it's going to come right up, right? I mean, they tried to make the monster the scariest thing possible. I mean, what else are you supposed to do? Just give him teeth. give him fangs and teeth. All right, thank you, Mitzi. Nada. Okay, just like Chloe, you're being subtle. I think that these are correct. You did exactly what I wanted. But I think that don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to go wild. Don't be afraid to go crazy. Like you discovered that he had this little triangle on the top of his head, right? Just like play with it. Play with the idea of the head being twice the size of the body. And I know you're in danger of it not looking anything like the original reference, but that's the whole point. It's play with it. See how far you can exaggerate it. Yeah, and squirrels are very soft and tame, so you picked a harder one to do. But this is technically correct. Again, I think that I would have preferred you investing in that line of action. That's okay. All right. Again, this one's a little more exaggerated here. It might have been a little bit more successful if you would have made the head smaller. Okay, thank you, Nada. May. Got 3 bats here. Okay, this is good. This is great. Oh, be careful. It looks like you're borrowing from Pokemon here. But I don't know if there's a fennec fox in Pokemon, is there?
Oh yeah, there is.
There could be.
Yeah.
There
Okay, so
is.
this is good. I like what you're doing here. I like your line style. I think that they might have even been a degree or two more successful if you would have kept that line of action in there and maybe not worried about the final quality of the line so much. I would have liked to see your work, just like your math teacher does. I'd like to see your work. No, but okay, these are great. Thank you, May. Randy. And for the bear, I think you're just being very cautious. I think that it could be so cautious that he looks like he's the same bear. So you have to exaggerate it as much as you can. Okay, so now you're playing with the camel a little bit more. It looks like you've given him a giant fin. And here he looks like he'd be smoking some cigarettes or something.
Yeah, one with the Joe Camel kind of look.
And then, so this is not what I was doing. So I think that you maybe you would have distracted yourself from the initial exaggeration and then just kind of copying a commercial character. Because I think you should have stayed in this pose. It would have been more successful to keep your study with the geometry and the anatomy. And it reads here that you're studying the turtle, then all of a sudden you go to someone else's design. So not exactly what I was looking for. All right, you got the idea?
Yep.
All right, thank you, Randy. Rachel. Okay. 1, 2, 3. And again, I think that this one, you're just being subtle. I think that now, my advice would be take it to number 4, take it to number 5. The same with the bison, take it to number 4, take it to number 5. If you squint at the kiwi, he's just kind of like very, very subtle changes there. Take it to 6 and 8. You have the right idea, but don't be afraid to be crazy. Take a walk on the wild side, Lauren. Take a walk on the wild side. Okay, thank you, Rachel. And Moses. Moses, are you here? I thought I saw Moses and then he disappeared. All right, so this is good. I appreciate the reference right there. And the exaggeration is good. And remember too that in real life, there's some crazy looking roosters out there. There's some crazy looking chickens. Like their genetic variability is out of control. All right, so I like this study here. I like that he's taking the head, the line of action, I can feel it, although I may not see it. And he's exaggerating it a little bit, but then he's playing around with those forms kind of moving into each other. So I think that this is really a nice little jump in the study of the exaggeration. Again, I would love to see what happens, directing him to go to a 4th and a 5th iteration. And the same thing with his little iguana, or whatever that thing is. The same thing, make it longer, give it wings or something. All right, I'm going to refresh the page. Did anyone upload while we were talking? Did I miss anybody? Okay, I have my notes. You have your notes as well. No, I don't know where my Zoom went. All right, so I'm gonna do a couple things here. I'm gonna show you this, which is, I think, a very interesting approach to what we were just doing. And I forget who this artist was, drawing a Jeroba, which is a really great, really small desert mouse with big ears. And very long legs. I guess they just run like the Dickens. And so, this was just an example to show you, and this person's doing it in red pen. So you remember what we talked about with red pen last week, because there's no fixing it. You just have to keep going. And red is interesting because you can lay up on it a little softer and have your build forms be just very faint shapes in there. And then you can really make the red heavy. And if you need to, you can actually put either graphite or ink on the top of it. I also wanted to share this with you. I found this a couple weeks ago. And as soon as I stopped sharing the screen for you, I'll put this JPEG in the chat window. But, there are some of you out there who may consider working for the mouse at some point. But I think that when people start talking about this or that, this or that, or this or that, it's always good for an animation student to know just how many things the Disney company owns these days. I mean, it's just astronomical how much they own. So what I'm going to do,
In one way or another, you are going to be working for the mouse.
if you're working for the mouse. So I'm just going to put that JPEG in the chat. So you can go ahead and grab that JPEG. It's in the chat area. I just think it's interesting. I think I grabbed it off of Imgur or something, and someone had put together this infographic. And I don't think it's 100% accurate. It might be a year old or so, because I know for a fact that the Disney company owns Henson, Jim Henson Productions. They basically own Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog, and I don't see that on here. I don't know where it is. I don't see it. They own Lucas, Skywalker, Industrial Light and Magic. It's amazing how much they own. They have like tax holdings all over the world.
I think the Muppet Studio, it's called the Muppet, is like slightly below the Millennium Falcon picture.
I still don't see it. I'm blind. It says Disney Mobile, GameStar. What color is it?
It's green. It's like right there above GameStar and beside the mobile. It just says the Muppets.
Oh, I see it. It's like built into some labs team. Okay, so it is there. All right, so I just thought that you maybe would find that interesting. They own Capital Cities, ABC, and I think that if I was going to go on some long-winded diatribe, I know that when I was in the animation industry and Steve Jobs was actively telling Michael Eisner, no, stay away from Pixar, just stay away from us. We're not going to ever sell you Pixar. It's never going to happen in a million years. Michael Eisner is the devil. He's just a really bad person. If the orange guy that we just got out of the White House was bad, then Michael Eisner is like 4 or 5 times worse. There's a really great viewpoint of how horrible he was if you can read the Jobs book that was written by Walter Erickson. It just puts everything that I knew in complete and total perspective about the business part of our world, our game and animation world. And it's very interesting that it wasn't until Eisner was out of Disney for a couple of years and that he was safely away before Steve Jobs sold Pixar to Disney. And at this point, I don't think Disney even knows how much they own. I just thought it was interesting, and you should just be aware of like, what? How much do they own? All right, so we are going to do a couple of things simultaneously today. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about the line of action for at least another 4 weeks, if not longer. So just get used to it, Noah. Get used to it, Chloe. Got it? I'm going to drive you mad with it, because as soon as I don't have to talk about it, then I can set you free. Then I can say, okay, we've got a CD-ROM game coming out, and it's all about clams. So I need 15 different character designs for clams. And what are you supposed to do with a clam? There's no line of action in a clam. And the instant you start putting a line of action in there, it doesn't look like a clam at all anymore. So you're caught between 2 rocks and 2 hard places. It's like, I'm so confused. And at the same time, we'll be doing character design. We'll be doing caricatures. And in my storyboard board, you should have seen as we clicked on it, as we clicked on it, I think this is a storyboard, that I've got caricatures in there. You know, I really like this one of Bruce Willis. It's just so weird, but it looks totally like him. And this is a very simplistic way to get a character. Did I not share my screen with you?
No, you're not.
Oh, that's because I hate you. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. All right. So again, this Bruce Willis one is just amazing. And today I just put in the turnaround from I think of his name, Cusco from Emperor's New Groove. And we're going to talk about horses today. We're going to talk about horses in a whole bunch of different ways. But then remember too that I'm also putting these caricaturization things here because it's the hardest thing to do. And all I'm going to ask you to do is try it. There's a couple of really great tutorials about facial shapes, and there's a whole bunch of different approaches to it. This is like what I was talking about last week with the bean shape. You know, so here Carrie Jin is talking about you can't draw a character without a bean shape, and here he or she is proving it with the examples that they're showing you. And I just put the bats in there because I'm a bat kind of guy. I also put this like drawing of the witch, the Warner Brothers witch in there, just because the lines are so perfect. It's like, oh my God, with just like, you can see that Chuck Jones is just drawing really quickly, but accurately. And she's got really big hands holding the broom. It's just so wonderful. There's just a whole bunch of really great things I've added to this board over the last week. You know, the guidelines showing you what a pose is like without the line of action and with the line of action. Here's a really simple mouse character, and you can't draw any of those poses without thinking about the line of action. So yeah, that's the top of the board right there. The one thing that I did is I wanted to click on this horse. So I came back over to this one, and we're going to talk about horses today. And at the same time, we're going to talk about lines of action. So this horse right here is saved to the board. And again, you're all invited to that board. So you should be able to just click on that and see it. These are just really, really great drawings of horses. They're constructed, they're methodical, they're also elegant because there's just a few lines. They're not overdone, they're not underdone. I don't know what this crow is doing up in there, but I don't care. It's the power. It's the power. I think the horse is an interesting character because there's just a massive head, massive shoulders, massive body, and the upper front legs and the upper back legs have these massive muscle structure, and then the legs get really skinny. There's hardly any muscles down here. It's all upper leg. And there's different kinds of horses too. So we'll talk about this here thoroughly for what I want you to do. I want you to take a look at horse anatomy. And I want to point out a couple of things just before we go too much further into this. And that is that I want you to pay attention to, well, I like this composite skeleton over the actual picture of the horse itself. I'm trying to remember, there was something that an artist had done a while ago where they actually took a horse and they painted the bones on the side of the horse. And this kind of actually looks like that one. But it doesn't matter. What I want to talk about is that even though there's a very rectangular form very triangular form to the head, to the neck of the horse, and another triangular form to the actual head. So the neck has a big triangle and the face, the head has a big triangle on top of this line of action, and then a bean shape. You see the bean shape. Now I truncated the bean shape just a little bit because this is the hindquarters here, right? So that's, I want to just point that out. And again, I think that you can see this, if you can see this, that there's definitely a bean shape in there. Definitely that the bean shape overlaps the triangular shape for the neck, and the triangular shape for the head just kind of attaches to it tangentially. Ears are big, right? The horses can have big ears, but remember that that little bean shape, that bean shape overlaps it. And to think about the bean shape then in terms of a bigger three-dimensional form in the beginning, and a smaller three-dimensional sphere in the back. Remember that the hindquarters are then attached to it. All right, so then from the, remember too that there's this strange line of action for the neck bones. It's just something that you have to grapple with as an artist when you're drawing horses, that there's like this S shape inside there. When you go back down the spinal column here, that rides right along the top, right along the back of the horse. So the spinal column is right along. It's not like down the middle or anything. It's right near the top. And if everyone's okay with that, you see this outside curve here. You see this first outside curve on every horse that you'll ever see. There's a nice strong curve. And if you look at the musculature, they call that the withers. But in the musculature, it's like where the sternocleidomastoid, it's where the trapezius comes together with the scapula, and the scapula is huge. So I'm going to change colors here, and Zoom is freaking out on me, so 1 second. So the scapula is here. It's just a really big triangular bone. We have a scapula, it's in the back. Our collarbone is in front. Our clavicle is in front. And I forget my horse anatomy, whether the horse has a clavicle. They might, but we're talking about the scapula. So this scapula is pointed this way. And it's just a direction. It's not technically the line of action, but the first bone that connects to the end of the pelvis, they counteract each other here. So this is one thing I want you all to remember about a horse. From the part where the trapezius meets the spinal column, going forward, it goes forward, and then the first bone in the leg system goes backwards, and then they go opposite of each other. See this? It's like almost 90 degrees. And then you have your humerus and then your finger bones, your actual metatarsals. So that's one of the tricks about getting a horse right, is that the neck is weird, but build that triangle in there. And then the scapula is huge, and it goes front towards the face, and then opposite towards the back, and then zigzag. And that this part of the I don't think it's the femur, because I think this is the femur. This part and this part are parallel with each other. And there's also another similarity in cats. So let me show you that one. So the similarity is, it's similar in many animals, but so in the cat, the scapula goes front, points towards the front as well. So you could break this down, and then, so this is the pelvis right here. So that would have to have been the pelvis. on the horse as well. So this triangular shape, which we can't really see it being triangular because it's in the side view, is almost 90 degrees to each other. And just like the horse, the back leg and the tibia are almost always parallel with the pelvis. So that's just a really great way to knock out your original sketches, where if you're drawing a sketch of a cat, you draw the head, you draw the line of action, you draw the bean shape that is the cat's body, and then leave room for those muscles in the upper lower leg. And then the scapula goes forwards, the pelvis goes backwards, and then these lines are almost 90 degrees to each other, just in a static pose. And then most always the tibia and fibula and the pelvis are parallel with each other. So, and then look at all the other ones. It's like you can see it in almost all the other examples. You know, whoever's doing it, whether it's coming out of a science class or just a regular illustration, that it's there. And then, so I want you to take, what I want you to take away from this is we just talked about a horse and we just talked about a cat, and we're seeing this in the animal kingdom, that the pelvis and the tibia are parallel with each other in the beginning pose. All right, so let me clear that. All right, and let me bring out something else. Oh, hold on a second. Okay, so let's go back to our horse. And what I want to do is, I think I just typed in horse anatomy here. And so let's just look at the structure for a little bit. We're going to be doing two things. We're going to be doing a study of horses and a study of the line of action with the horse at the same time. And so there's a couple of things that kind of play when you're drawing horses. They're not easy. That's one of the hardest animals to draw, just because of these delicate legs. So let's keep talking about this for just a second. And I'm going to do this in kind of the same, almost wanted to say temperature, the same kind of feeling that I had when I was going through to art school, and then when I was getting my MFA through the academy. And I kind of mentioned this last week when I was talking about the animals that I had to draw for that drawing class in my portfolio. But it makes sense to kind of approach this from a musculature point of view, a skeletal point of view, and then a musculature point of view. All right, so once again, we're just gonna look at the horse here. We're gonna study, when we're drawing a character, we usually just draw a circular or a spherical shape for what is the head first, and then round this out by giving this a conical shape here. And I think that that's always the best approach. Putting a midline in there, making sure that this circle is identified as a sphere by putting in those cross lines in it. It also makes sense to kind of locate where the eye is so that you don't lose track of it. And if you're exaggerating it, make sure that you always have things tabbed open so that you can go back between 2 or 3 different examples. So again, once you've got that head drawn in there, the basic line of action for the horse, don't follow the spine, because the line of action drives down the middle of the form. So this is one of the first times where we're really going to talk about driving down the middle of the form. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Now, let me just continue building this for a second. There's a cone for the neck, right? So we're going to make sure we draw that cone in there for the neck. And then we draw that bean shape. And this is really a great animal to concentrate on the bean, because there are 2 very distinct, a bigger one and a smaller one. Now, if you make the mistake like trying to draw the bean shape through the rump, through the back, the butt, you know, you're not going to get into trouble. But just remember that the quarters are going to overlap it. Just remember that the muscles for the rear leg are going to overlap it. And so two different approaches there. You can do it like the bean there, or just get the bean shorter and more like a bean, but then remember to put the three-dimensional form for the muscles of the back of the leg, including the pelvis and upper leg. They overlap each other just a little bit. All right, so one of the reasons why I wanted you to understand that as an animator, you would pull your line of action through the horse like this, is that this vertebrae that makes up the spinal column for the horse is really stiff. If you just look through all of these drawings, all of these images, there's a few that are photographs, but most of them are drawings. There's very few times when this backbone, when the spine is altered very much. It does have some flexibility, but it's kind of stiff. Horses are big. And the reason for that I'm mentioning this is because the line of action then for this bean kind of always stays like this. It doesn't really straighten out, it doesn't change its direction like a cat would change its direction. So if you were drawing a cat, you know, one line of action drawing of a cat could very easily be that the cat is getting themselves up on their haunches and they're looking at the fish tank, and they change their line of action. A cat is easier to draw just because they can change their line of action from this to this. Their cats are very flexible. You know, you've seen all of the videos of them going through really small openings. Well, a horse's back, it's kind of stiff. So when you're drawing the horse, keep that line of action fairly stiff itself. The neck can change. So its orientation, and I don't see, well, here's one here. So that triangular shape that is a neck can bend down. So the line of action here can bend this way, and the cone can then point down so that the horse can eat something on the ground. But the back is kind of a stiff element in a horse. Everyone okay? All right, so then a couple other things I wanted to point out, and that is that, and I already did this, but let's just do this again. So here's the scapula, here's your pelvis, and then this is the femur. So, and the femur and the tibia are very often they're almost parallel. You know, obviously when the horse is moving around, this can move, but the pelvis moves as well. So if the leg is going forward, the pelvis is going to rotate. So just keep that in mind to look for that Z pattern in the legs. And then the opposing Z pattern in the front feet. And once again, you see that in cats and dogs and lots of animals, that the scapula, the pelvis, tibia, and femur are opposed to each other. Right, so you can see that right there. It's almost like a figure 8. Right, so another couple of things I want to point out, and that is that, and again, this is just a quick reiteration, that in a horse, the ulna and the radius are fused together. They can't twist their front leg like we can twist our front arms. And so because of that, there's not a lot of muscles from this point downwards. This drawing here is not the best, so let me move away from it. Let me take a look at this one. Yeah, this one's okay. All right, so with this one, you can see that like there's like these muscles up here, right? It's like the apparatus to get this leg moving forward. Number 4, it's like triceps. So there's biceps and triceps and an extensor magnus, and there's just a crazy amount of muscles right here. And then they just straighten out. So the whole reason for these muscles is just to get the rotation on the lower leg and on the hoof. So that's all the horse is going to need to do is just get that little bit of rotation in there. So what makes the horse kind of hard to draw is locating these bony landmarks. And I thought that we would start drawing the horse first because it's easier to see these bony landmarks on a horse. Then sometimes it's a little harder to see them on a human, on a human form, because it depends on how fleshy that human is. You know, people can be a little more rounded and it's harder to see their bony landmarks. But in the legs of a horse, you know, pay attention. So I'm going to switch colors here for you for a moment. The next thing, once you've got the idea of where the bony landmark is that now you want to pay attention to the distance, like between the hindquarter and the measurement to the actual, this is the horse's knee. And so if this is the first measurement, then this is their, I'm just trying to be precise here. This is their extensor. And then I believe that these are the fused little finger bones or little metatarsals, metacarpals, metatarsals. And so this distance is close to being the same. So that's one big measurement you could take. The other thing is how the outside curve, and remember we talked about this before. So when we saw the muscle, we saw the bones, the pelvis is up here, the femur is here, the tibia is here. And so you remember that a typical leg bone is going to be just that cartoon. It's going to have the roundy, nubbly bits at the end. You know, not being too scientific, but that's okay. This is what causes those bony landmarks, is the rounded part of the exterior of the bone. And so remember that anything that is close to the main body is proximal, and anything that's away from the body is distal. So that anything, the proximal arc on the bone is bigger, and the distal end of the bone is usually a bit smaller. So I think that the reason why it looks bigger here is because there's a bunch of other things happening with cartilage, and it's just a drawing. All right, so what happens then is that what you want to imagine is the center line for the bone. So when you're studying this, you can kind of see that the pelvis is kind of straight. The femur has got a slight curve in it, but not enough to really throw you off. The tibia is kind of straight, and the finger bones for the horse are kind of straight. Every example. So when I speak of the tibia being here, then anything that is an outside curve looks like this. Anything that's an inside curve looks like this. Remember, we've talked about this before, so let me just reiterate. So this is the humerus and the tibia-fibia combination. Anything that's an outside curve is like this. Anything that's an inside curve is like this. This is kind of what makes drawing the horse fun and difficult at the same time. Let me see if I can switch to a better drawing here. Hold on one second. I want to see if I can find one that is more like a medical illustration. This is interesting. Let's take a look at this for just a second. Oh, this is proportional measurement, so that's kind of good. And because of that, we're getting the references to the other proportions. You know, it's good, but it's a drawing, so I was hoping to find one that was more either a photograph or medical illustration. Because when we're talking about these bony landmarks, there's one peculiar thing about a horse And I see it in this drawing here. So let's just stay with this drawing here for a second. Okay, so in the tibia, remember that the ulna and the radius are fused together in the front, and we can move our foot a little. We can turn our foot, but the horse's rear leg bones are fused together. So their tibia and fibula are fused together, but there's this little part here that sticks out. So it's kind of a cool and harrowing thing at the same time when you have an outside curve for the femur that continues to an inside curve to the turnover for the proximal end of the tibia, but it's often very smooth. But in the back, there's all kinds of things. Look, there's an inside curve, then an outside curve, and then another inside curve right in a row. So this combination of inside, outside, and inside curves for the rear leg, I believe it is prevalent on animals like ostriches or large birds, other animals that are related to the horse. But just remember that it's easy seeing an outside curve, right, to the ulnar radius synthesis, and then an inside curve to the outside curve of the muscle. But this is all bone right here. And so there's a inside curve to the line that describes all of the sinew and tiny little muscles in the lower rear leg. And then there's an outside curve for the distal end of that bone. And then it goes inside, outside curve to the hoof. And then remember that when you're doing this, you want to make sure you get your measurements correct. So if you start thinking outside, inside, outside curve, and you're only thinking outside, inside curves, you could get them in the wrong place. This is another cool thing about the horse, is that inside curve to the hoof, which is like the fusion of all of our fingernails put together. It's very pronounced, and you can see it in every picture and every drawing. It's very strong. It's not fragile, but remember, what I'm talking about is right there. So the hoof is here, then there's an outside curve, then an inside curve. It's a real big inside curve to the outside, and then an inside curve again to the muscles and sinew of the lower leg. Looks like that. Inside, outside, hoof. All right, so as long as you are onto that, I want you studying what these bony landmarks look like and how you're going to approach them. And I want you looking at drawing a whole bunch of horses. I think the first horse that you draw should be just in a standing pose so that you understand the anatomy of the horse. And if we could just click on this guy again, he looks, oops, let me. So this guy, even though he's a little small, he's looking good. So the first thing that I would like you to do is just study the horse. And so study the horse by, I always start with the head, figure out what the line of action looks like through the horse. So that's your second step. And again, you have two different approaches in finding the bean shape for the main volume of the body, which again has a bigger volume in the chest and a lower volume in the back, and then get the hindquarters involved in there. You can, if you would like, to try to draw the femur, tibia, fibula, and phalanges bones as a line of action, but it might be easier to think of the line of action as just the drive that puts the pose in the horse, and that these bones operate more or less like straight lines, and that the rear and the pelvis and the scapula are always opposite. So there's always that zigzag, and you get that right. And then I would like you on top of that, just to study what the outline of the horse looks like accurately as possible with outside and inside curves. You would do well to put in the lines that help you with the proportions like we saw in that other drawing. But remember that when you're drawing a triangle for the shape that is the neck, it's really three-dimensional. So draw a cone. So that's your first task, is to study the horse, just in terms of line of action and just a static pose, bony landmarks, and the outline. Yeah, I don't think it's necessary for you to get in there and study all of the different muscles. I don't think it's necessary for you to do what this woman's doing right here and paint the anatomy onto a horse. It's odd. I mean, it works sometimes, but it's kind of odd. So remember that that proportion drawing that we were just looking at. This one? Nope, that's not it. I don't know where that proportion drawing landed. I don't think I navigated away. All right, so. All right, and then after studying the horse, put it in a pose. So your second drawing is going to be of the horse in a animator's pose. And so after all of this little rearing up here, it's a good thing for you to study. So if you were just going to study this one, let's bring that up so we can see it just a little bigger. So this is good, right? It's rearing. You can see all the anatomy. You can see all the inside and outside curves. And then just go looking through, well, we have this keyed in as horse anatomy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this one to just horse. All right, and don't do this one. I don't know what's going on here. This horse might be pregnant, and there was a bunch of memes out there on the internet that were making fun of this one. And remember, just stay away from this one. But remember that there are huge horses. They're mammoth. They weigh thousands of pounds. And so, this one, these spindly legs are not quite so spindly anymore. So let's just take a look at some of these. You can, if you want, study fawns. I would prefer you staying with the adult, but some of them are just absolutely stunning in their proportions. The hair on their tails and the hair on their manes can be really, really long. That's why violin and cello bows are often made with horsehair, because those strands of hair are very long. This is a good one for running. It's perfectly in the 3/4. That's a really good one to study, and you can see all the landmarks. So, wherever that one's coming from. This is not a horse. All right. So again, for all of you that found it to be a little frustrating, this is a picture of a horse in the front view, but try to find a horse that's in the 3/4, like even between those two that we just had. This is a better image to study than this one. This horse here is more in the 3/4. You can see both eyes. You can see the little outside curve for his left eye. So that's a good point for you to take away from this. This looks strange. I don't know what's going on here. Yeah, that's not right. I'm gonna stop looking at that. And that looks strange too, because the hair is so modeled in the photograph. If you were going to try to attempt to study this one just as a drawing, you might get into trouble because there's so much hair that you can't see the anatomy. Again, I think that side views are great, but the 3/4 view gives you more of a chance to study, and the front views are really hard. Technically everything is foreshortened, and you really can't see the proportion. So try to stay near 3/4. That's a toy. Don't draw a toy. Don't draw a toy because it's already been exaggerated to some extent or another. A toy has already been exaggerated. All right, and the idea then is that in that second pose that the horse is being dynamic, and the rearing up is ideal. You just want to study it. You just want to, like, again, this is good. It's in the side view, but if you can get one that's rearing up in 3/4, it's even better.
Can
This,
we do a pony or a donkey?
yeah, you can if you want, and if you want to, you can include that in your drawing so we know what the reference is looking from. Be careful of something like this. This is already a drawing, and you don't want to do a drawing of a drawing. So you should be drawing doing a drawing from a photograph. So be careful. You know, this looks like it's got an alpha channel behind it, which means that someone took it into Photoshop and just separated the background out. That would be fine. All right, so the trick would be is that if you are going to do like a small horse or a pony or something, you got to be really sure of your proportions. When you're looking at an adult horse, there is a typical set of proportions that your eye sees. And so, yep, this is just a regular horse. But when we look at a horse like this, it's like, whoa, what's going on there? You know, all of a sudden the musculature is different. It's a different breed. You know, it's beautiful. And once again, these horses are like, whoa, you know, they're the size of a truck. And so you could get yourself into just a little bit of proportional trouble trying to study this one unless you're being really accurate. And the thing that might sell a study like this, and I forget what this horse is called. I used to know, but I forgot. Is that you would put in a silhouette of a man or a woman standing there so that we knew that this is one of those horses. Clydesdales are huge, right? You know, this is like a typical horse. Good bony landmarks. You can see what I was talking about with the bean shape being separate from the hindquarters. This is a good horse. He's in the side view, so it's a little harder to see the perspective on him. You know, this one, the legs aren't quite as nice. All right, so that's your first study, right? Or your first and second drawing. Again, I think the second drawing would be better if the horse was rearing, if the horse was doing something. Rearing is great. Running is great. If all 4 feet are off the ground. And remember what I said about any of these particular poses right here, any of them. Look at all these poses. That bean shape doesn't really change its line of action. The line of action connecting the neck to it does. And that's what I'm looking for you to study. You know, it can change by 45 degrees. but horses' backs are fairly stiff. They have to be, they're just too big. All right, you got the idea? Got the idea, okay. So then there's a second part to this assignment. So let me clear this out of here. All right, so the second part is, and I think that it's okay to go from our animal studies into an animal study with the horse. That's just a little bit more challenging for you. So I'm gonna write what I said down here so that when I put these assignments in the grade book that they're accurate. So the first one is horse, and then the line of action for a horse. And the idea would be is that he is rearing or running. And again, I'm saying this on record, that the idea here is accuracy in anatomy. Nothing funny, no characters. I want real horses. Okay, so then the second part of this is that, and again, I think that if we as a school had an anatomy class and a drawing 1 and a drawing 2 class and a drawing 3 and an animation studio class, we could break out the study of these components a little more precisely. But what I'm going to do is just take you from your the idea of the line of action within a horse into the idea of a line of action into regular human or human character poses. And again, I'm writing this down so that what I say is accurately reflected in the assignment area. All right, so let me explain the best approach for this. And for me to explain this, what I want to do is I just want to look at a few of these, and I know that I've talked about this before, but let's go over this again. It is the main thing when you're drawing a character pose. This is showing you how not to do it. This is showing you a very bad silhouette. This drawing up here, it's good because it's showing you that the photographer and the artist who is using this as a drawing reference made sure that this character had a good silhouette. The camera was in a good position. All right, so then let's look at this one. Let me tab back over to our site for just a second, our class. And I just want to make sure that it's there, that I put in the Flooby Newbie right here. And remember, I went over that before about how to really look at the line of action. But now we're going to be using it. And so what I want from you is 10 drawings of a character that are just the line of action and a few indications where their volume is going to be. So something like this is a good example. Something like this drawing right here, where the animator, whoever it is, the storyboard artist has drawn the head and the bean shape for the body along with the line of action first. And you can tell if you've drawn that line of action at any other time because it drives the form. So let me do a little draw over for you. This character right here, if I draw the head and the line of action through like this, it is balanced. This character is standing on the ground plane, and the bean shape for their body, the volume for their legs, the line of action that is the legs, and the line of actions that are the arms has the weight, and it is balanced. Everyone okay with this idea? So that's one big thing I'm looking for in these line of action poses. In these right here, you see the head, the line of action, secondary lines of action, tertiary lines of action. The weight is still balanced. And that's kind of one of the strange things about going into a life drawing session where you have a live nude model and they're posing for, sometimes the instructors do it frontwards and backwards. Some instructors start with the line of action poses first, then they go to 1 minute, 2 minute, 5 minute, 10-minute poses, and then they end with 20-minute or 30-minute extended poses. And you're usually drawing charcoal on newsprint. I like to reverse it. Whenever I'm doing a life drawing class, I always start with a 20 or 30-minute pose, because then you can study it longer and the model gets warmed up. And then I do a couple of 10-minute poses, 2 or 3 5-minute poses, and then I'll do a whole bunch of really fast gestures. And in some sessions, I'll even have the model just continually moving on stage. And at one point I told the model, it's like, okay. And I gave the model a prop and I said, follow my cue. And I told the life model that he was in the kitchen and the stick that he had was a broom, and he was chasing a raccoon out of the cat door. And that the students then were supposed to be drawing the poses, the gestural poses, as quickly as possible. And so let me find another couple of good examples here. So this one's fine. So this little guy right here, and they're somewhat accurate. So head, line of action. Head, line of action. Then you draw in the bean shape for the body and you get the model posed. So the best thing that you can do is to find images of humans just on the internet. So I will open this in another tab and we'll just say action poses. Oops, I have to break that up. Action poses. So I'm going to click on this one, switch it to images. And so these are great. So these start to work pretty well here. I would like you to try to stay away from the 3/4 view. I'm sorry, from the front view. It's just always a little harder to draw. All right, so this is good. If you're studying this pose, you would draw the head, you would draw the line of action. And in this, you can see that the line of action comes through the main form of the body. Then there's a secondary line of action for her feet. This pose is still balanced. All of these poses are still balanced. Even though she's in the air, she is going to land right there. She is not catapulting herself sideways. This pose might be. You know, that was one of the things about having my life model chase an imaginary raccoon around the drawing stage, is because he was actually in motion. These drawings, these photographs look like they're actually in motion. You know, I have to study it a little closer, so don't do this one. But this is good, where you have a head, a line of action that describes the bean shape for the body, and then a line of action for each one of the feet and hands. Hands are going to be a little hard because they're all foreshortened here. This is good. That you're looking for a pose that has a head, a line of action that is visible, that you can see that bean shape in there, and whether there's secondary or tertiary lines of actions for the arms and feet, that creates a good silhouette. You're looking for a good silhouette. Like this one, I can't see her left arm. So I'm like, oh, I might dismiss this one. This is a better one. Even though this arm is in front a little bit, you can see the head, the line of action, and that's the first and second step. Find the bean shape that is the body, the line of action that drives the lower legs, the legs, and find the line of action that drives one arm, find the line of action that drives the other arm. There might be a secondary line of action right here for this lower foot. This is the kind of drawing I'm looking for. Head, line of action, discover this bean shape. This might have a good flow between left leg and right leg, but that's kind of a very compound curve. It might be easier to go, this is one line of action, this is another. Her arms are another. When an artist is putting together a drawing like this, it's head, line of action, body, line of action for the upper legs, line of action for each lower leg, and then each part of the arm. And if the artist is not drawing all these steps, it's because they've drawn that kind of pose before, and they know it, they're just not putting all those early steps in there. Again, head, line of action, the bean shape that is the body, the line of action that describes the feet, maybe a secondary one, the line of action that describes the arms. You could go ahead and fill in the volume on the connection between the legs and the body and the volume on the arms and put a neck in there too, that's fine. All right, so let me go back. All right, so remember that there are a couple of different approaches, and I usually take a risk at saying this, but this is a different approach. So someone here is drawing head, line of action, and instead of drawing a bean shape, they're drawing an upper volume and a lower volume for that bean. If you're willing to try that, that's fine. And then they're drawing like technically bony landmarks for the deltoid, the elbow, the wrists, the knee, the ankle. I'm not really sold on this one because it's usually too many little noodly parts. I usually try to keep the gestures really simple. What you're doing is drawing gestures, and I'm looking for 10 of these gestures. All right, so you're welcome to study a life drawing pose like this, where that there is tension and flexibility. I think that the one we've got selected here is fine. Let me go back to the top and pick a different one, see if I can get a different read on this. So I like this approach here. The thing that I don't like about this is that it doesn't have the head drawn first. I think that in my experience, there's a couple of things that you want to think about, and that is that you should always get the head in there first, because as soon as you start drawing this olive or this football shaped head, it automatically sets into place where the measurement, where the whole length of the whole pose should be. So my steps are draw the head, then draw the line of action. And this is a different approach where instead of drawing a bean, they're drawing like the technical contour of the left side and the technical contour for the right side. And they're filling in those forms with the exterior contour. It's not a bad approach, but I think that in all of my experience, you draw the head first, leave space for the neck, draw the line of action second, draw whatever that bean is, and then get the line of action for the legs and the line of action for the arms. And you can kind of see that this drawing here was good until you realized that this torso is really big compared to the short feet. See what I mean? All right, let me clear this. Let me find another example for you. All right, so now that we've selected that, we're going to get kind of distracted a little bit from my intent. Well, we could just talk about this one for just a second. No, this is the main drive. This is the main reason. And I believe we talked about this before, this actual drawing before, is that, and I understand what the artist is doing here about putting a line of action on an inanimate object. I think that's fine because it just kind of gives you action, reaction. Although I would like to keep the idea of line of action given to a character, a human or a character, as opposed to the line of action for a table, with the parentheses that in animation, sometimes the table can bend. In animation, the table can certainly have squash and stretch. And so you might want to draw a line of action for a table if you're going to bend the hell out of it. Like, look here. In this example, and I think we might have talked about these before too, where the coffee cup is alive, it's anthropomorphized, it's a character, it's jumping around. In the Beauty and the Beast, there were a whole bunch of characters that were objects, and they were drawn with the lines of action too. You know, for some reason I like this. Even though it's a furry, I hate furries. But I kind of just like the way the head, the body, the line of action follows the pose. I'm a touch skeptical that the line of action was drawn separate, like in this one, that the drawing, there was a rough drawing, and then the drawing was cleaned up a little bit, and it was broken down, and then it was cleaned up, and a shadow was put on it. Then, at the last minute, let's put the line of action in there, which doesn't match either one of the poses. Same thing with this one. These squiggly lines do not match the pose. They just don't match. They're not gathering. They're not describing the weight or the dynamic correctly. This one's much closer. Although I would take issue with this one for just a moment, and that as an animator, you would say, okay, good, I'm going to draw the head. I'm going to draw the line of action for the main torso. Here's the bean shape, and it's flat on this side. So there's her bean shape. And then if you were going to continue the line of action, start from the hip, and then there is a compound curve here that I would draw first, because that has the weight on it. And so if you're trying to get the dynamic in this leg involved in it, first, I think that is okay. But I would draw head, the line of action, the bean for the body, and then the compound curve that is the leg that has the weight on it. And then if you needed to, you could continue this one, figuring out the shoulders, the hips, and the line of action for the right arm and the left arm. That this is the kind of thing I'm looking for. I would like to see 10 drawings of poses that are in good dynamics. So this one's good too. So let's just kind of look at that one for a second. All right. Okay, so this is interesting because what this drawing is showing is something that and if you feel confident about this, you're welcome to explore this idea. But what I would be looking for is the head, the line of action, the bean that is the body, it's always the bean, the line of action that is one foot, the line of action that's the other foot, and even though we can't see the other arm, it's here. What's happening here is that they are pushing the pose. And in order to push the pose, they just take this. They would say, here's my head, and they're gonna push the line of action. So instead of drawing this shape, now they're just drawing this shape for the line of action. It's kind of what we talked about last week when we were talking about exaggerating the design of our animal characters. Now they're saying this is the life model, but as an animator, you are now going to exaggerate what you see as the line of action here into here. Now, I would only say that you would try this if you feel very comfortable with getting the, because you're just drawing a gesture. Head, push the pose, that's called pushing a pose. Draw the bean shape in a pushed fashion, but then you're going to have to draw one line of action for one foot, one line of action for the other. And even though you're pushing it this way, it still has to be balanced. This character is not moving. All right, and then the line of action for the other arm. And once again, once you've got that bean shape in there, just give yourself a little bit of exterior volume. The thing that I like about this kind of drawing is that they're mixing the volume of the head. You can see the bean shape in there a little bit. The line of action is in there. And then the rest of the pose is just very simple gestural lines. And they're all good poses, right? Even the little elves down here, right? And in this example, they're talking about pushing and pulling, which is the idea of pushing a pose. And they have the word line of action written across her back. All right, is everyone okay with this idea? So what I'm gonna, so once again, it's a drawing of a horse, and then a drawing of a horse in action, and you're drawing, making sure you're drawing anatomy and lines of action with the horses. This week is a big, huge study on the line of action, and then 10 humanoid characters that are drawn gesturally. And again, I will reiterate those notes in the assignment area. But what I would like to do now is just take a deep breath, right? And let's just talk about some artists that take this line of action and push it to the max. Okay? Everyone ready? So this artist's name is Mike Matasi. He is a life drawing artist. He lives up in North Bay, California here. He is the author of these Force books. And for many years, he taught life drawing at Pixar. So it might tell you a little bit about his prodigy, a little bit about his, where he starts from and where his poses end up. He skips all those early steps about head, line of action, and he draws, let me see if I can find a good example. Like he'll draw this line for the back, and then this line for the crack of the butt, and then this line for the leg, and this line for the outside of the lower leg, all in one gesture, because he can see it. He's been doing this for 30 years. But I can't see all of that. I have to build my poses. But he is so good that he can like not only draw the head, the bean, the body, the leg, the lower leg, and the gesture, the line of action for all of it in one pose, comma, but he can exaggerate it at the same time. And he's the best. Mike Matasi, again, he's the author of these Force books. Now, that's him right there. I've met him half a dozen times. I think I might even have him in my cell phone. I could email him right now. He's a very interesting artist. He's making his living now selling these drawing classes online. So there's a bunch of artists who are now your competitors who are taking his classes and they're learning to draw like him online. I don't forget whether it's pricey or not. It's not the cheapest class that you would ever take. And there's like 25 classes that he has that you can take in succession. But he understands the line of action and the force and the weight and the exaggeration more than almost any other artist. And so I'm not expecting this. I'm not expecting you to get the dynamics and pushing the pose like Mike Matasi. But if you want to check it out, it's on the recording. I'm talking about it here. It's certainly worth your while because there's a couple of books. There's Drawing Force, there's Force 2, there's Human Anatomy, there's Animals in Force. He's got a whole bunch of them that are just really, really great, thorough, insightful books about how to build poses. This is like him seeing the force in every single line that he's drawing. And, so he's like the force maniac. Like, whoa, it's a great drawing. And again, he's capturing the pose and exaggerating it at the same time. So he's the master of this. Like I said, he taught at Pixar for a while. And let me see if I can show you what he's doing on Instagram, because in the days of leading up to him building his school, his online school, many of his poses were very, very exaggerated. This is just a very good example about, whoa, I know the patella is there, but do you have to make the patella exaggerated too? Where something like this is easier to understand. He's drawing the head and the line of action for the contour, if that makes any sense. So what I'm talking about is drawing the line of action for the whole entire upper torso, the entire beam. But he's drawing the line of action for the exterior shapes, which are obvious in that other pose. But on Instagram, he's been posting a bunch of stuff that is much more. This is David Coleman doing characters. We'll talk about him in the next couple of weeks. All right, let me search for him. So the stuff that he's been doing more recently, I think, is much more tame. It's much less exaggerated. It's much less pushed. The forms are much more academic rather than taken to the wild side, if that makes any sense. I think that they're much more anatomical, if you will. Okay, so, and again, these are great gestures, and that's what you're doing. You're drawing 10 gestures. The gesture includes the head, the line of action, the beam, the volume, all of that. These are 30 seconds. So even Mike Matasi says these are 30-second drawings. To understand the body's entire pose in 30 seconds is the key to drawing that pose. All right, so there's a couple of things that I wanted to alert you, a couple of things that I wanted to impress upon you. And that is that one of the reasons why we're doing it with this is to really understand that process. And so I thought I had it on my desktop. I was looking for it earlier today. day. And I don't know exactly what I did with it. I used it for something in autumn, but I don't think it's in this autumn folder. And I think I might have even mentioned it to you all before. It was oh, I did. It was the 21-step process of drawing and, you know, being really articulated about it. But one of the things that is taking that process that I had talked about and applying it to something like this, where the character is totally, or the animator is totally moving the camera. It's like, this is just a crazy pose. This is Mike Matasi at his best, where he's taking the part of the pose and bringing it towards the camera and really understanding what the force is on all the lines just very quickly. This is like a 5-minute pose. And remember too that these poses, these drawings are done 18 to 24 inches. They're not little drawings. He's using his whole arm. He uses a block of graphite. I forget what the thing is called. I have one of them. Let me see if I have it here. Yeah, I have it here. I forget what it's called because I have a piece of tape over the name of it. But it looks like this. This is just like a block of 9B graphite, if everyone can see that. It's very, you know, and you never sharpen it. You just go, 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 go. You just keep drawing. And that's what he's drawing with here. He's drawing with just this huge nub of 9B charcoal, as soft and as black as you can get. And then when you get that flat part in there, he just goes zip, zip, zip and fills in all the dark part for the hair. You know, so yeah, he used to take his camera to extremes. And I think that he's really toned it down. He's really toned it down a bit. All right, so let me just take a breath here. Does anyone have any questions? Comments, complaints, conundrums, criticisms? All right, so let's take a couple of things that relate to drawing a gestural pose with the head, the line of action, out past the idea of process. Because what we're doing is we're just learning those first few steps. We're just, and this kind of pose reminds me of it right here. What we're going to do is we're going to change this line of or Mike Matasi to Robert Valley. Now, there's a couple of things just about Robert Valley. He did a episode of Love, Death, and Robots on Netflix. I think he might have done 2 of them. He won a nomination for Academy Award for his film Pear Cider and Cigarettes, which I believe that's what this image is here. He did the most recent John Belushi documentary that has a bunch of animation in it. And look at the way Robert Valley draws. Everything is exaggerated. The pose, the weight, the length of the build of the character design. He's like, this is the reason why we're studying the line of action. There's no way to draw and animate a shot like this without really truly understanding the dynamics of rhythm, line of action, gesture. You know, this is crazy. And the thing is about something like this, Robert did this in just like 20 minutes. He did all the drawings for that walk cycle in like 20 minutes. He's a storyboard artist. He lives up in Toronto now, you know, back and forth between Toronto and Edmonton. This is really, really stylistic. And people go to him for drawings like this. And there's a whole bunch of people in our circle of friends that try to be him, but he wins all the time. This is what Robert looks like. And that's his life. A drawing table and a window full of beer. Don't you wish you were right there? So he and I worked together at Colossal Pictures and then at Wild Brain and at his own company called Mavericks. But yeah, he lives up in Toronto now these days. This is a still from his Hair, Cider, and Cigarettes. This is a still from the John Belushi film. So you take what you learn as drawing gestures and apply that to your character design, and that fuses the style together. No, I'm not asking you to develop your own style this particular semester. It could take a lifetime. Robert is brilliant. He developed this kind of style here after I stopped working with him. There was a thing that he did for Peekaboo Street. I don't know if we're going to get anything here because this was like before the internet. Yeah, you can see it. You can see it in the short that we did at his studio, that he was already starting to develop that deep foreshortening, deep perspective, lots of straight lines against skinny, against flat and black. So just keep that in mind. Let's take another look at another artist. Let's do this one. So this is great. So Peter de Sève started doing his drawings very naturally, separate than any drawings that an animator might do. He spent a lot of time doing these New Yorker illustrations for the cover of New York Magazine, and just a whole mess of stuff. He did the character designs for Ice Age. So, you know, if you cross references, again, we're going to keep talking about different artists from now all the way to the end of the semester. But this is just great. These character designs are absolutely astonishing, wonderful. They're beautiful. Sometimes the designs can be very difficult to animate, but look at what we just came out of last week and started with today, just about taking a character and exaggerating it, right? So we're taking the class here all the way to full circle. This is Peter de Sève. You know, you can see it up there, 3 words, Peter de Sève. Just in this drawing right here, you can see all of what we were looking for last week. You know, there's not a lot of crazy exaggeration. It's more like Norman Rockwell almost. The stuff is great. And he is always working. He's always got tons of stuff on his plate. Peter de Sève. Let's take a jump on things that are almost impossible to animate. And I don't know if you know this. This artist's name is Al Hirschfeld. He was in his 80s. I think he was almost 90, and he was still drawing when he died 10, 15 years ago or so. And he did characterizations of everybody, often with just really simple gestural lines. And then, you know, you look at one of these and it's like, oh yeah, I know who that is. That's Elton John. You know, this is John Wayne, or this is Clint Eastwood. You know, this is Benny Goodman. This is a self-portrait. Just amazing. Astonishing the way that he views the form of a character's, a person's face, the characterization that is a person's face. And this would be terribly difficult to animate because these are just forms. If you had to animate this, it would just be like motion graphics. You know, here's the cast of Seinfeld. You know, amazing, just really simple lines. I think his midlife stuff was better than his early or late. But yeah, this would be really hard to animate. you'd have to really concentrate on what your lines are doing. Let's pick another artist that again, one of the reasons why we're doing this is to design characters. So we'll talk about Theodore Geisel. Theodore Geisel is Dr. Seuss. And his characters are very animatable. So now we're going backwards a little bit. Now we're looking at characters that do have more of a three-dimensional form to them. Imagine the Al Hirschfeld drawings turning in space. It would be like, how do I do that? That would be really hard. But the Theodore Geisel stuff, Dr. Seuss, Theodore Seuss Geisel, always thought of his characters as three-dimensional objects. You can see it in everything he drew. And you all know his work. Hopefully you all know some of his work. All right, let's take a look at one more and then I'll let you go. Look, it's like I've searched these before. So this is an artist. Her name is Sarah Mansinga. She lives in Austin, Texas. And you cannot tell me, I will not allow you to tell me that she did not draw this pose without a line of action. Now we're putting it all together. We're looking at head, line of action, bean, volume, line of action for the arms, line of action for each foot. It was all there. She lives in Austin, Texas. Her stuff is thoroughly gone over the web. She is always busy designing. Her stuff is astonishingly beautiful. You cannot tell me that she did this pose without a line of action. She is all about the line of action. Everyone agree with me? Yes, Mr. Billy. All right, so, and there are some things that are a little less action oriented. One of my favorite drawings that she did is of a girl and her cat. Look at it. Just look at that drawing. It's like a very big head, really skinny torso, right? Isn't it beautiful? And then look at the cat. The cat's got like 6 lines. And this is the coolest cat you've ever seen. Just nod your head, Lauren. Yes. So once again, I'd like you to study the anatomy of a horse and then put the horse into a rearing or running kind of pose. And then just like we did for the last hour here, studying gestures with the head, the line of action, the beam, and stay towards the human form. And what you're gonna probably wanna do is find action poses just like we did that are pictures of people moving, jumping around, and just study them. They should be 30-second, they should be 1 minute drawings, somewhere between 30 seconds and a minute. And I want 10 of those. So 2 horse drawings and then 10 gestural studies that are about a minute long. And I know that you all take twice as long because you want to be careful, but don't go over 2 minutes. Don't go over 2 minutes. If your drawing is longer than 2 minutes, comma, you're doing it wrong. I want you studying the gesture. And like I said, you can push the gesture if you want. If you feel comfortable with it, push the gesture. I believe we're gonna go from this into life drawing. So this should be a good study in how to use the line of action setting a pose. If it's not, then I'll come unscrambled and I'll go backwards and we'll work on it for another week or so. Remember that we're going to try to finish out the semester with thumbnails, storyboards, putting thumbnails on top of a background, just to finish this out. So that's the projection of going through the rest of the semester. All right, so study this well. It's only 12 drawings, but make sure that you understand that swooping, gestural, either simple straight curve or a compound curve for the line of action. And if you need to just study the line of action by drawing S over and over and get your arms warmed up, then do that. One of the things that I could see as an issue is that if you're drawing on a tablet, my tablet is only this big. There's only a total of 8 inches, so you have to be a little slower with it. If you're drawing a pencil on paper, you should do one of those gestural poses that we just talked about for the humans on 8.5 by 11. So don't draw small, draw as big as you need to draw. The horses should be 8.5 by 11, so 12 sheets of paper, regular paper. Don't draw small. Draw as big as you need to. They don't and shouldn't be on 11 by 14. They're hard to scan, but that'd be good too. 11 by 14 is great. All right, has everyone got this idea? I will put the directions for this up in Canvas in just a couple minutes. Okay, and remember that the object is to have fun with this. If you're not having fun with it, you're doing it wrong. If you're noodling and struggling, you're doing it wrong. Okay, all right, I'll let you get on the bus a little early today. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Bye, Mr. Belly.
Okay, goodbye.
Good night.
Okay, goodbye.